Thanks for taking some time to be here tonight for 3 panel discussions. Looking forward to speaking about the all-important role of contentment in holistic health, and especially as we're looking to start some new ministry around here that zeroes in on contentment. I'm grateful to have you here. I'm very thankful to have this panel that represents a lot of ages and stages as we get into talking in this first panel discussion about some problems connected with contentment or potential hurdles that people think about when it comes to contentment. We're going to be able to hear from these 4 guys, Denny, Dave, Kyle, and Rich, here because they represent lots of different ages and stages, generations. We got a guy here who will check the box of 20-something, a guy who checks the box of 40-something, a guy who checks the box of 60-something, and a guy who checks the box of would rather not say. Thanks, guys, for being here tonight. Let's jump right into it. Problems and potential hang-ups associated with contentment. What negative stigmas might someone associate with contentment? What negative thing might come to mind with contentment? Kyle?
Yeah, I think, going off the idea of kind of just the younger generation and kind of the way I see contentment, just what that word means is, I think the thing that I put together with contentment would be settling down. That term, settling down. What does it mean to settle down? What does it mean to, take life and go from busy to more simple, right? Contentment looks like that for someone my age, I feel like. So for me, that word settle down and contentment, therefore, is really intimidating. It's really an intimidating thing that I feel like my generation would struggle with, just because it's all about the hustle and bustle, especially in the culture we find ourselves. And it's all about, what is that next thing? What is the next thing we can set our eyes on, and the next thing we can achieve? And ultimately, contentment means, for me at least, settling down to a way of, one thing, one group of people you surround yourself with, one church, one job, instead of multiple, and getting everything all at once. So I think for me specifically, that word contentment, the negative stigmas, the kind of ick that it makes me feel, would be more so that I have to choose one thing, choose one group of people, choose one community, for an example. And it's hard because what if I make the wrong decision? Mm-hmm. What if I don't choose the right community? What if I don't choose the right job? At such a young age, you feel like you have such a weight to this decision will determine my next every aspect of life. So I feel like for me, that negative stigma means it's a weighty decision to be content, because what that means would be more of a settling down, quote unquote.
Or being stuck maybe with something that you feel like now I'm just glued to.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anybody else have a thought on that one?
Sometimes I think people will see it as old, stuck, unconcerned, where contentment tends to push you into another state where people just look at you like you're not touched, it's not real. Mm-hmm. The anxiety that's around tends to heighten that of what contentment might look like. And somebody who's in a very anxious state can find that to be very negative in there, because it just is so polar opposite to what they're feeling and who they are.
I have a thought on that, and I have a question that I want to ask you guys in just a couple of minutes here along those lines, because that is a really important thing you just brought up. But think of the terms contentment and complacency. They're 2 different words. How might contentment be confused with complacency?
I think contentment for me is moving forward. Using my skills, using my base that I feel comfortable, and feeling like I'm productive. Whereas complacency, other people might see the same thing as being like you're not really working that hard. Mm-hmm. It might be really easy for me to build a building, but for somebody else, that's all you do. Mm-hmm. So it's a different way of looking at the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that it's there could be really probably interchanged words, I think, for some people, until you really think about the motivation, I think, behind both of them. I think about contentment, I think about it more of as a positive thing, and that idea of I want to be content. I want to have joy. I want those things to be positive. But also that willingness to do something more if it comes, versus complacency, I think, is that negative connotation that is just kind of passive, and I'm kind of stuck in a spot. It's like I don't know, it's just like almost that idea of like, it's fine.
Who cares?
Yeah,
Who
who
cares?
cares? I don't need to go. So those are, I think, those two different things I'd look at. They could be looked at the same way, but I think that motivation is very different.
The thing I have a
Yeah.
concern about when you said that, Rich, is that complacency can motivate and can degrade into the I don't care,
Yeah.
which is a very bad state to get into. So to be I don't care what's going on anymore. You move to that area.
You're saying complacency or did you say
Complacency.
Yeah.
You can get to that drift lower into that level of complacency
Exactly.
where it just is I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Contentment is joyful happiness. Contentment is locked into stuff that is positive. Complacency does have that negative connotation. Complacency feels lazy. It doesn't move forward. I think, Kyle, that's what you were talking about, with your generation, moving things forward, pushing the envelope, not settling in. So I guess it behooves a person to really explain what makes them content, where that comes from versus the complacency. And maybe adding to that, how can personal contentment, and this is along the lines you were talking about, Dennis, how can personal contentment lead to a lack of awareness of pressing needs in other people's lives? How can contentment in your life lead to a potential lack of awareness of pressing needs in other people's lives?
I think that general awareness, if the contentment is, it's kind of that, I don't want to say it's a selfish thing, but I'm kind of content. I'm good with where I'm at. I have this peace, going on. I think the hard thing is that could almost then, it's a me-focused thing a little bit. So therefore, there's not a general awareness, so maybe of other people's needs, If we go out to coffee or whatever, and I'm like, hey, Kyle, you want to get coffee? And it's only a few bucks, but I'm at peace with that, but he might not be. What does that look like, going out to dinner with someone, you pick up the tab or whatever that is, it's general awareness of you might be content, but maybe there's that sense of where other people's needs at. Just because financially one might be good, maybe the other's not, or they might you might be good with your health and other people might not. So you might be more internally focused, I think would be maybe a thing. You're not looking at other people's needs as much.
Yeah, does it create a bubble around yourself that you don't let other people in? Is it keeping you, like Rich said, is it keeping you from really looking out for other people and going to that uncomfortable place, out of your comfort zone, out of your contentment to help somebody else?
Yeah, Dennis, you were kind of getting on this just a little bit, because when we do live a content life, when God has given it to us, Philippians 4, that's what Paul says that secret was, contentment. It can almost look like we're aloof, and it can make people who really have needs even come to the church and say, why don't, they can't just hear, well, just be content and all is going to work out when they have bills to pay or they have food that they need to put in their kids' mouths.
I think you can become, I don't know if there's such a term as over-contented, to the point that you don't, like Richard said, you just don't see what's happening out and around you, and you start looking at saying, I've done the planning, I've done all my homework, I've moved myself down the line either with career or family or personal items in my life, and I've now got to the point where I'm here. I'm content with where I'm at, and don't brush up against my bubble, because the friction gets too great. The heat inside there gets too, and many times people that get to that state can't handle the people on the other side of what's wrong with you. And so it can bring that lack of awareness of need of somebody right next to you, and you don't reach out to say, how can I be extending myself?
A term that's kind of, made its way around, especially over the last several years, is the term entitled. And you don't want to be called entitled, because that is something that is going to you're going to wear it like a black eye. I think that sometimes that is what people are feeling towards someone who is content. There is a sense of it's almost entitlement, like, your God loves you, good for you. How come this is happening to me? Why is this happening to my family? That lack of awareness is something that I think every Christian has to be well aware of, anybody who wants to dive into contentment. And at the same time, I think it is something that would push people away from contentment because it does have this perception of entitlement, holier than thou, or whatever it might be. And yet, we're called to be content. So we can't run away from the biblical imperative that we are called to be content. Dave, when you think about contentment, why would someone with strong contentment, someone who actually has contentment in their life, why would they perhaps be perceived as being weak?
I think a lot of it is if you're in your bubble, even though you don't think you are, other people might think that, oh, you're not even trying. You make it through life so easily. You have everything you need. That's my contentment. I worked hard to get to where we are right now. But somebody else may say, oh, you're not really even trying. You should be doing more with what you have. You look at you. You have 2 new cars. You have all of this. You should be out every day finding people, giving them food, whatever. It's a kind of catch-22. I have all the resources I need for myself. And I'm content. But I should be doing stuff with it.
Yeah. I think there's something to say about the speed of life when you see the difference of someone who would claim to be content versus someone who's striving to be content, right? When you see someone who's striving to be content, they're living in that more fast-paced environment of striving towards, I need to get that new car. I need to do X, Y, and Z in order to feel I'm at a place that I can be content, versus someone who's actually content feels the peace, like we're talking about, to just exist and be kind of confident in that way. And I think just when I think about this question, a different word that I would use, almost a synonym for weak in this regard, would be almost unmotivated. When you get to that point of you feel content, you feel just right where you are is good, it feels like you don't need to have that hustle and bustle, that attitude of motivation to get to that next thing, to achieve that next accolade or goal. It seems almost as if that person who would be content would be in a place that they're just satisfied with where they're at, and therefore they don't need all of these other things, which society kind of tells us you need this, that, and whatever to be happy. It's like, no, if we're content with what we have. So I just feel like that pace of life plays a lot into the way we're perceived as either weak or unmotivated, kind of in that regard.
Back to the lack of drive, laziness, things that your people are piling on. This is what that actually is, when you know in your heart, no, it's totally different than that. It's a positive thing.
Right. Yeah.
We're talking about hang-ups and hurdles that are connected with striving for contentment, pushing into contentment. What are the things that would keep someone from wanting to do those things? Let's talk about some life issues. What life issues keep a person from pursuing contentment? Or what would keep someone from saying, yeah, that sounds like the kind of life that I want? Paul says, I learned the secret to be content in all. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. What life issues might keep someone from really believing that?
For me, it comes from what perspective you're basing it on. And I mean by that, contentment means liking what you've got, liking what you're doing, liking where you're at. If you're into a mindset of instant gratification, of reaching out and saying, I've got to have this now, as opposed to saying, I'll build toward that and get that. Those types of issues, especially in the area of finances and things like that, when they reach out, they've got to have this next place. I've got to have this next position. I've got to be pursuing the next level up. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, having been in business, I mean, that was part of who I was pursuing that area. But the contentment came, for me, the contentment came with making, who became a real good friend, was making my boss look so good that they had to promote him. And when we had our first interview for our annual review process, he asked me, what job do you want in the company? And I looked at him and I said, I want your job. And he looked at me and he said, really? He says, I said, I want your job. And he said, well, how does that work? I said, because we're going to look so good. I'm going to make you look so good that they've got to take you to this next position. And I'm hoping that with that, it's the old push-pull. I'll push you up, you pull me with you. And for 15 years, that's the way it worked. And he became the senior vice president of a major airline. And we just kept moving. And the whole perspective was being comfortable and being contented with this relationship and really helping somebody else move, because it just ended up in the business world, just kept bringing people with it.
Yeah, I think in the business world, that dog eat dog, step on someone else's neck to make yourself 3 inches higher, that will keep someone from moving into a content life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What else? I want to hear from all you guys on this. What are some life issues that you think keep people from pursuing contentment?
I think anxiety is a big one, you know, that idea of fear.
Anxiety?
Anxiety, yeah. Anxiety, sorry. Yeah, I think fear, the what ifs probably keep people from, you know, going in. I think in my world, you were talking, you know, just looking back, it's cool. I'm like still, I don't know, I'm looking back, but I'm also looking forward, you know, and I think about God's faithfulness all of that time, and I know his faithfulness going forward, but there's still so many what ifs that keep me, I think not just keep me, but I think rob me of contentment for sure. You know, what if this happens? What if this happens? And again, talking about just the resting, and it's hard because you're not just talking finance or, you know, job, career, family, spiritually, like all of it kind of encompasses that, even though I'm going to look at it more obviously spiritually. I think I could be very content there, but there's other things that rob me from contentment in finances or whatever it might be. So, and it's that, I guess, fear and anxiety of the what ifs probably, I think, are life issues that, I don't know if it stops me from pursuing it though, but I think it keeps me from it. So maybe I didn't answer the question.
I think what I'm hearing is, the word that's coming to my mind is control. When you have to give up control and you're really seriously in someone else's hands, that is going to keep you from saying, I'm cool with that, especially if you don't like your situation. That's kind of what Dennis was talking about. You know, when it comes to success, if you really are pining for the next thing and you feel like, if I don't do that, I'm not going to make it. So control, success.
I'm probably going to actually just say control, probably. I'm just kidding.
That's a good one. I like it. I go with it. Kyle, how about you?
I think it comes down to selfishness. In the end, I think when we talk about life issues, I mean, I'd say that's an issue every single person struggles with, right? Like, raise your hand if you're selfish. I'd be the first to admit that, right? I think about myself more than I think about others. I think about what's best for me more than I think about, you know, what's best for the people around me. And therefore, what that does, I think, in my brain is makes me strive after more things, you know, more success, more accolades. And in the end, if we just took a moment, and I'm kind of even just hearing from you, Dennis, thinking about how do we empower others to be better with where they're at. And I think as we look to serve others, be selfless, you're thinking about yourself less. And I think it's so simple, but I think it's like a key to life, like a recipe for success is thinking about others more would lead you to more contentment because you're just not thinking about what you don't have. You're thinking about how you can encourage and empower others more. So I think in the end, if we turn from selfishness to selflessness, it could look a little bit more like we're pursuing contentment.
Spoken like a true Bible teacher.
You know, when I look at life issues, one of the things that strikes me that hits especially well, it hits everybody, but mostly, when you're in your 20s, 30s, and then you get down to when kids are 15, 16. I mean, social media has just wreaked havoc on life. And you talk about contentment. I'm not sure how you get contentment if you're burying your face and your mind in looking at and reading about what's going on in the social media area.
Yeah.
Because you're never, from what I can see, you're never going to match. You're never going to make it. You're always going to have to be 1 or 2 pegs low, and you're just defeated every day. So anxiety just rips you apart, and contentment is a foreign. It's just a foreign piece of society.
That is, I think, very, very true of your generation,
Yeah.
right? Very digitized, haven't known what it's like to not have, that in your hands. Is that making sense?
Oh yeah, I think 100%. I think the thing that comes to my mind in that sense is the fact that social media is filled with just comparison. I mean, as we get to see the best versions of people's life on a screen versus actually knowing them in person, I think the simple way to think about it is that, it says in the Bible that comparison is the thief of all joy. And I think as we continue to compare ourselves, and as specifically my generation and younger continues to develop in technology and access to everything at their fingertips, just we see anxiety, we see these social issues just skyrocketing because comparison is happening left, right, and center, But yeah, I think comparison is just a huge issue in today's society that's robbing us from being content. Absolutely. With my
I've often thought that they ought to make social media have before and after pictures. In other words, when you put something up there, you have the before, the makeup and the airbrushing happens, and then the after, and see what they really look like. If you've ever seen it, it is like, who in the world are they?
You've got a new platform coming.
Yeah, exactly.
This is awesome.
Danny's about ready to put
This
the
is gonna
best
go.
app ever together. David, how are you?
Well, I think about, where I'm at right now, just retiring last year, and talking to young guys that I worked with for many years, and trying to get them to just put away a couple of bucks every day. And they just can't see it because our society is so, oh, you got to have that. You got to have those shoes. Look at their shoes. They're the same. Those guys are cool. So it's that constant thing. Well, what's the next thing? I've got to do that because I've got $10. I can buy that or whatever. And I try to tell them, no, you got to do it now because tomorrow, years from now, that tomorrow, you're not going to have anything, and it robs you of contentment today because everything I have a ton of things I don't even use. I shouldn't even bought them. I would have had all that money. You guys know that.
Family would attest.
Family knows that right there. I would have had a ton more money, but I didn't. I wanted to get it.
Short-sightedness,
Short. Yeah.
comparing,
Yep.
control, success. These are things that get in the way. The thief puts them there to steal, kill, and destroy because they grab our attention. They pull us away from the truest kind of life that we could live, and that's one where we are in perfect contentment with what God has given to us. So we're going to be wrapping up in a few minutes, but before we do, I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to talk about someone in your life personally, who serves as a great example of contentment. And then if you'd like to share a little bit about why that person comes to mind.
I will.
Go, Dennis, let's hear it.
I have to say, and I hope I don't get through it. My wife, Barbara. Over the last 20 years, things have gone on in our life that would have dragged you down and maybe put you in an area of great distress, mentally. And Barbara has been that constant, buoyant place in our family. Demonstrates that to our kids and our grandkids. And so that's where I see that, as that person in my life that allows me to enter into that, to have a complacent place where we can enjoy life together. some bad things happened, but God was good, and God has taken care of it.
That's awesome. Thank you. Dave, how about you? We'll go down the line. Who in your life sticks out as a great example of contentment? You guys are all getting choked up on me over here.
When you're old, you get that way.
I'm not trying.
Go on to somebody else.
Okay, Dave needs a minute. We're going to work our. Thanks a lot, Dennis. See if you can get started here. Rich, how about you?
I love my girl. Hey, babe. She's definitely content. I think that she's incredible for sure.
And remember the microphone's over here.
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
Hey, sorry.
Thank you.
I think an older guy in my life, his name's Ben West, goes to our church here. He's actually serving right now in the Philippines. I met him, almost 8 years ago. Just have spoken awesome truth into my life. Constantly, I feel like encouraging me. I've said it to different people, but he said this phrase a long time ago, no Bible, no breakfast, and what he still I think he still lives by. I'll find out at some point. But he's, right now, he teaches Sunday school classes here. He's faithfully studying. He's constantly doing these things. I feel like is a guy who could be really content, and I think is content, but he's still wanting to pursue his relationship with the Lord more and more every day. So I like that about Ben.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Good.
And he's in the Philippines right now serving when he could be here. So
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. Kyle.
I don't want this to sound biased because the people that hop into my mind first are sitting on the stage with me. But
Thank you.
I don't know. Learning a lot right now. No, but some guys that stick out to me, I think there's some qualities that, Brent and Rich embody. Just, they have a love and a zeal for specifically Long Beach. Like, if you ask either of these two guys about Long Beach, they could probably talk to you a whole TED talk about why Long Beach is the place to be. And I just think it's so funny because in my life, I've moved around a lot. I spent a lot of time not in a lot of places for a long time. And seeing these two guys just like settle in, and even looking at Rich and knowing that we have a similar background with just camp ministry, and then seeing him leave that ministry to go to do something else super awesome. And then just being so, like, I didn't think you could get more excited than doing camp ministry. And then seeing this guy just so excited to dive into church ministry here at Arbor Road, and then just what it means to be in community. It's truly encouraged me to be way more present here and content here because there's so many other places to be, but Long Beach is the best. It's the best.
So I'm going to change my person so I can get through it.
That's okay.
Ben West. Not Ben West. Bill
I was
Stamps.
going to say.
Bill
Bill
Stamps.
Stamps.
So when I was an elder, it was during a period of time when this church was going through some changes. Got a letter from this guy, I want to come, and we were all pretty much in agreement, and he said no. And he went through all the things he wanted to say. We all listened to him.
You can't even get through Bill. That's okay.
He was a good mentor,
Mm-hmm.
somebody I looked up to, and really educated me on what it's like to be an elder and why, and
Mm-hmm.
that's
He's a great
I
guy.
miss him.
Boy.
Yes, he was.
Bill was like, they don't make them like Bill Stamps anymore.
They don't.
Wait, one of the last things that
They
Bill
don't.
said to me before he died was he was raising his grandkids, and he said to them, "I've shown you how to live for Christ, and now I'm going to show you how to die for Christ." He was rock solid. I bring all those people up. I wanted you to talk about that because Don Clifton says, "Shine a light on what is right." when we have hurdles and hangups, we find people who do a great job at it, and it inspires us to do something that would otherwise be pushed away. So, guys, thank you for the time you've spent looking into this with me, and let's put our hands together and thank this little crew.